"Give me your husband?" She said it softly, not as a challenge, not as a joke, like it was something she had already decided. I remember the clock on the wall, it was ticking too loud, or maybe the room had just gone very quiet. My hand was on the counter. The counter was cold, still slightly damp from the cloth I'd used a moment earlier. The coffee in my mug had gone untouched. It smelled burnt now. Elaine stood across from me, her coat still on, her purse tucked under her arm. She looked calm, prepared. I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't understand, but because my body needed time to accept what my ears had heard. She waited, patient. "Give me your husband," she said again, a little slower, as if repetition would make it reasonable. I lifted my eyes to her face. I had known her for more than 20 years. She had sat at my table. She had cried in my living room. She had held my hand at funerals. And now she was standing in my kitchen asking for my marriage like it was something misplaced. I felt something settle inside me then, not anger, not grief, stillness, the kind that comes when something final has already happened. Before that morning, my life had been quiet, predictable. I had been married to Hudson for 32 years, not a dramatic marriage, not a fragile one either, just long. We had learned each other's rhythms, who woke first, who needed silence, who needed noise. He was not expressive, he didn't talk much about feelings. But he showed care in small ways, fixing broken hinges, making sure my car had gas, turning off lights I forgot. Love for us had lived in habits. We lived in the same house for most of our marriage, white siding, a narrow porch. Wind chimes that made noise when the weather shifted. I worked part-time at the library. Hudson worked long hours. Our children were grown, gone, the house had learned our silence. Dinner at the same time each night, news playing low, lights off early. I thought this was what stability looked like. I didn't know how easily it could be misread. Elaine came into my life slowly, through school meetings, shared schedules, small conversations that grew longer. She had an easy laugh. She listened closely. She had been divorced for years. She said she preferred being alone, said she didn't need anyone. I believed her. We became friends in the way adults do, gradually, without ceremony. She knew my routines, my kitchen, which mug I liked best. Hudson knew her too. She was around often. She was familiar. That mattered later. The first change didn't announce itself. Hudson began mentioning her more often, casually. "Elaine saw Mark downtown. Elaine thinks the council's wasting money again." Nothing alarming, but I noticed his voice changed slightly when he said her name, softer, more attentive. I noticed and then I dismissed it. Trust makes you generous with explanations. Elaine started stopping by more frequently, sometimes without calling first. I was nearby, she'd say. She'd sit at the table, ask about Hudson. "How's he holding up? Is work still hard on him?" The questions sounded caring, but I noticed how she stayed longer when his car was in the driveway. How she glanced toward the door when he was late. I said nothing, because naming something gives it weight, and I wasn't ready for that. The morning she came over, the morning everything shifted, was unremarkable. Hudson left early, didn't kiss me goodbye. "Long day," he said. I watched his car disappear down the street. I remember thinking nothing of it. Less than an hour later, the doorbell rang. Elaine stood there, coat on. "Purse ready? I need to talk," she said. Her voice was calm. I stepped aside and let her in. We stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we had shared years of small truths. I poured coffee. She didn't touch it. She looked at me for a long moment, as if deciding how direct she could be. Then she spoke. "Give me your husband." The words sat between us, heavy, still. I noticed my breathing first, slow, controlled. I noticed the sound of the clock again. I realized something important in that moment. This wasn't a confession. It was a request. She believed the outcome was already decided. She just wanted my cooperation. I looked at her hands, steady. I looked at her face, expectant. And I understood then that whatever I said next would divide my life into two parts, before this moment and after. I didn't answer her yet, but I knew, whatever I said, nothing would return to the way it had been. After she spoke, the kitchen did not change. The light stayed the same. The clock kept ticking. The refrigerator hummed like it always did. Elaine stood where she was, waiting. I stayed still. I noticed small things instead of answering. A loose thread on her coat sleeve, the faint smell of her perfume, something floral, too strong for morning. I wondered how long she had planned this, whether she had practiced the words, whether she had imagined my reaction. She didn't look afraid. That mattered. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded steady, even to me. She hesitated, just long enough for the pause to say more than the word that followed. A while, I nodded. A while, I repeated. She took a breath then. Like she had been holding it in. I didn't come here to fight, she said. I just wanted to be honest. Honesty, the word felt misplaced in my kitchen. And Hudson, I asked. She looked down at the table, ran a finger slowly along the edge. He cares about you, she said. He always will. That was not an answer. But, I said. She lifted her eyes. But he's unhappy. There it was, not cruel, not dramatic, practical. I felt something tighten in my chest, not sharply, slowly, unhappy. I thought of all the nights he came home tired, all the mornings he left early, the silences I had learned to live inside. Had I mistaken endurance for contentment? Elaine took a step closer. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe this was right, she said. For all of us, she included herself easily, included Hudson without hesitation. I was the only variable. I folded my hands together to keep them from shaking. You're asking me, I said, to step aside. Yes. The word came without weight. As if he's an object, I added. As if marriage is something that can be transferred. She didn't argue. I'm asking you not to hold on to someone who doesn't want to stay, she said. I looked at her then, really looked. Her face was calm, resolved. She believed she was being reasonable. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped softly against the floor. You don't get to decide what my marriage is, I said. She sighed, not impatient, just tired. I'm not deciding, she said. I'm acknowledging what's already happening. I walked to the sink. Turned on the water. The sound filled the room. I stared at my hands as the water ran over them. The skin looked older than I remembered. Thinner. Elaine spoke again. I didn't plan to fall in love, she said. It surprised me too. I turned off the faucet. You should leave, I said. She paused. This won't go away, she said quietly. I know, I answered. She picked up her purse, adjusted the strap. At the door, she stopped. When he chooses me, she said, I hope you'll be gracious. The door closed behind her. The sound was soft, final. I stood alone in the kitchen. The coffee was still untouched, the clock still ticking. I sat down at the table, stared at the place where she had been sitting. I waited for something to happen inside me. It didn't. No tears, no anger. Just clarity. For the first time in months, maybe longer, the uncertainty was gone. I knew something had been wrong, and now I knew what it was. That afternoon passed quietly. I didn't call anyone, didn't text Hudson, didn't replay the conversation out loud. I moved through the house slowly, folded laundry, watered the plants, wiped down counters that were already clean. My body knew what to do even if my mind hadn't caught up yet. I remembered moments I had dismissed. Hudson stepping outside to take calls. The way his phone never left his pocket. The way he'd stopped asking me about my day. I had told myself it was age, routine, fatigue. I had been generous with excuses. By late afternoon, the house felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. I started dinner early. Chopped onions. The smell made my eyes water. I welcomed it. It gave my face an explanation. I set the table for two, out of habit. When I realized what I was doing, I paused, then I finished anyway. Some routines are hard to interrupt. Hudson came home just after 6. I heard his car before I saw it, the familiar sound of tires on gravel. He came in quietly, loosened his tie, set his keys down in the same place as always. How was your day? He asked. He didn't look at me. Fine, I said. We sat down to eat. The clink of silverware sounded too loud. He took a few bites, then stopped. You're quiet, he said. So are you, I replied. He nodded. I watched his face, the lines around his mouth. The way his jaw tightened when he was thinking. She was here today, I said. He froze just for a second, then he exhaled. I know, he said. That was when something inside me shifted, not broken, just realigned. You know, I repeated. He nodded again. She said she was going to talk to you. I waited. He didn't say anything else. Is that all you have to say? I asked. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else, he said. You already let me, I replied. He flinched. I didn't know what to do, he said. That sentence had weight. I had said it myself many times in other contexts, other years. I didn't plan this, he added. It just happened. The same words she had used. I noticed that. How long? I asked. He hesitated longer than she had. A while, he said. The word sounded different coming from him, heavier. I nodded. A while, I said. We sat in silence. The soup grew cold. Do you love her? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. I care about her, he said. She understands me. I waited. He didn't say he loved me. That was an answer too. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I believed him. That didn't make it easier. What do you want? I asked. He stared at the table. I don't know, he said. That was the truth, and it was the problem. I stood up. I'm going to bed, I said. He didn't stop me. That night I lay awake listening to his breathing beside me. It sounded the same as it always had. That surprised me. I thought it would feel different. Foreign. It didn't. In the dark I thought about the years we had shared, the life we had built without realizing how quietly it could be undone. I didn't cry. I didn't pray. I just lay there awake, letting the truth settle where denial had been. The days that followed were careful ones. We moved around each other politely, like guests sharing a space. Hudson slept on the edge of the bed, left early, came home late. Elaine didn't come by again. But I felt her presence anyway, in the pauses, in the unspoken. I didn't tell the children, didn't tell friends, not yet. I needed to understand what I was feeling before I explained it to anyone else. One afternoon, Hudson sat across from me at the table. I don't want to hurt you, he said again. I know, I replied. I just don't know how to fix this, he said. I studied his face. You can't fix it, I said. You can only choose. He nodded. I need time, he said. Time. The word landed quietly. I've given you 32 years, I said. You can have a little more. He looked relieved. That surprised me too. That night after he went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house was silent. I thought about Elaine's certainty, her confidence. I thought about my own calm, and I realized something unsettling. I was no longer afraid of losing him. I was afraid of losing myself by holding on too tightly. That was when I began to plan, not revenge, not confrontation, clarity. I needed the truth to come fully into the light, not just for me, but for all of us, and I knew it wouldn't stay private for long. It never does. The plan did not arrive all at once. It came quietly, in pieces, in the spaces between thoughts. I didn't wake up one morning knowing what to do. I woke up knowing what not to do. I would not beg. I would not plead. I would not pretend nothing had changed. Those decisions felt easy. They were rooted in dignity. And dignity, I was learning, was something I still had. Hudson asked for time. I gave it to him, not because I owed it, but because I wanted to see him clearly without urgency blurring the edges. We lived carefully during those weeks. We spoke about groceries, bills, appointments. Nothing else. At night, the space between us in bed grew wider, not physically, emotionally. I noticed how often he lay awake, how he turned toward the wall. I noticed how little that hurt. That surprised me. Elaine stayed away. At first, I wondered if that meant something, regret. Restraint. Then I realized it meant nothing at all. People who feel certain rarely retreat. I saw her once at the grocery store. She stood in the produce aisle examining apples, as if choosing carefully. She looked up and saw me. Her face changed only slightly, a flicker, then composure. Hello, she said. Hello, I replied. We stood there, two women pretending this was a normal encounter. How are you? She asked. Fine, I said. She nodded. I didn't mean to put you in a difficult position, she said. The sentence was measured, thought through. I'm sure you didn't, I replied. That was true. She meant to put me in my position, not a difficult one, just an unavoidable one. She reached for an apple. He's been quiet, she said. I watched her hand, the way she tested the fruit. So have I said. She smiled faintly. I hope we can handle this like adults, she said. I met her eyes. We are, I replied. She left the aisle with her cart. I stood there a moment longer. I realized then that I no longer needed her to explain herself. She already had. At home, Hudson continued to hover. He watched me closely, as if expecting something, an outburst, a collapse. Neither came. One evening, he finally spoke. She wants me to leave, he said. The words landed softly. I know, I replied. She says it's better not to drag this out. I nodded. And what do you think? I asked. He rubbed his forehead. I think I've already hurt you enough. That was the first honest thing he'd said in days. You've hurt me, I said, but not by wanting something else. He looked at me. You hurt me by not telling me who you were becoming. He swallowed. I didn't know myself, he said. That's never stopped you before, I replied. The truth sat between us, heavy, unavoidable. I need to understand something, I said, before you decide. He waited. When you imagine leaving, I asked, do you feel relieved or afraid? He didn't answer right away. I feel both, he said finally. That tells you something, I said. He nodded. What does it tell you? He asked. I thought for a moment. That whatever you choose, I said, you won't escape yourself. He looked down. I began making arrangements quietly, not separation papers, not yet, but information. I gathered financial documents, account numbers, insurance papers. I did it calmly, methodically. Hudson noticed. You don't have to do that, he said. I know, I replied, but I want to. That was enough explanation. I also began telling people, not everyone, not dramatically, just the ones who mattered. My sister first. We sat at her kitchen table. She listened without interrupting, without judgment. When I finished, she reached across and took my hand. I'm proud of you, she said. For what? I asked. For not disappearing, she said. That stayed with me. I told one close friend, then another. I didn't ask them to take sides, I just told the truth. It felt lighter each time, like opening windows in a house that had been sealed too long. The children were last. That was the hardest part, not because I feared their reaction, but because I feared altering the way they saw their father. They were adults. But parents remain parents. I invited them both over one Sunday afternoon. I made coffee, set out cookies, normal gestures. We sat in the living room. Hudson looked tense. I felt calm. I told them carefully, simply, no blame, no accusations, just facts. Their reactions were different. Our daughter went quiet. Our son asked questions, not angry ones, practical ones. How long? Are you separating? What do you want? I answered honestly. I don't know yet, I said, but I know I won't live in uncertainty. Hudson sat silently. When it was over, they hugged me first. That mattered. The shift happened gradually after that. Hudson began staying elsewhere some nights, said it gave him space to think. I didn't ask where, it didn't matter. The house felt different without him, but not empty, just mine. I slept better. I woke up without that tightness in my chest. One morning I stood in the kitchen and realized something quietly astonishing. I felt peaceful, not happy, not relieved. Peaceful. That was when Elaine called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Hudson says you're handling this well, she said. There it was again, that assumption that I was something to be managed. I'm handling myself, I said. She paused. I don't want to be the villain, she said. No one ever does, I replied. Silence stretched. He's struggling, she said. I imagine he is, I answered. I want to move forward, she said. Then do, I replied. She exhaled. You sound different, she said. I am, I replied. That was the truth. The turning point came on an ordinary evening. Hudson came home earlier than expected. He stood in the doorway, uncertain. I've made a decision, he said. I nodded. Sit down, I said. He did. I'm leaving, he said. The words felt less heavy than I had imagined. I don't think I can fix what I broke, he continued. And I don't want to keep you waiting. I listened. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I nodded again. Thank you for telling me, I said. He looked surprised. That's it, he asked. That's it, I replied. He searched my face. You're not angry, he said. I was, I replied. Now I'm finished with that. He sat there for a long moment. I don't know who I am without you, he said quietly. I stood. You'll find out, I said. I did. He left that night, took only what he needed. I watched from the window as his car pulled away. The same way I had watched it leave so many mornings before, but this time it didn't feel like something was being taken from me. It felt like something was being returned. In the days that followed, the story became public, not in whispers, not in scandal, just fact. People reacted as people do, some with sympathy, some with curiosity, some with silence. I accepted all of it. Elaine moved quickly. They always do when certainty has been waiting. I heard about it from someone else. That was fine. I didn't need front row seats anymore. What surprised me most was how little I thought about her. She had wanted my husband. What she hadn't understood was that she was never asking the right woman, because somewhere between her request and his departure I had already let him go. Not dramatically, not loudly, but completely. I began to rebuild without calling it that. I changed small things first, moved furniture. Painted a wall, bought new dishes, not because the old ones hurt, but because I wanted to choose again. I took longer walks, slept later. I learned the sound of my own thoughts without interruption, and I liked them. One afternoon, as I stood in the doorway watching the light change, I realized something that made me smile. She had asked me to give her my husband. What she hadn't expected was what I would give myself instead. The quiet that followed his leaving was not sudden. It arrived gradually, like a tide receding without ceremony. The house adjusted before I did. The floors stopped creaking at night. The bathroom light stayed off. The extra mug on the counter gathered dust. I moved through the rooms slowly, learning their new shape. Some mornings I woke up reaching across the bed, then stopped. Not with panic, just habit. I didn't rush to fill the space. I let it stay empty long enough for me to understand it. Hudson called a week after he left. His name appeared on my phone. I let it ring once, then answered. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. He paused. "I didn't expect that," he admitted. "That's because you thought my life was attached to yours," I replied. "It never was." Silence. "I'm staying with Elaine," he said. "I know," I answered. "You don't want to ask anything?" he asked. "No," I said. That seemed to unsettle him. "I just wanted you to know," he said. "I do," I replied. When I hung up, I sat there for a moment. I realized then that closure does not always arrive as a conversation. Sometimes it arrives as indifference. The practical matters came next. Bank accounts, paperwork, legal appointments. I handled them methodically, not angrily, not with resentment, just clarity. My lawyer spoke gently, asked if I was sure. "I am," I said. She nodded. People assume grief must look dramatic, messy, but grief, when it's processed slowly, often looks like calm. Elaine did not contact me again. That was not surprising. She had gotten what she asked for, or so she thought. I heard about them through others, mutual friends, neighbors. They moved quickly, made plans, introduced themselves as a couple. People smiled politely, asked careful questions. I watched from a distance, and I noticed something curious. No one looked envious. They looked cautious. That mattered more than gossip. One afternoon, I ran into Elaine again at the post office. We stood in line, a few people between us. She turned and saw me. Her expression tightened, then smoothed. "Hello," she said. "Hello," I replied. She hesitated. "I didn't expect to see you," she said. "It's a public place," I answered. She nodded. "You seem well," she said. "I am," I replied. She studied me. "I was afraid you'd hate me," she said. "I don't," I said. That surprised her. "Why not?" she asked. I thought for a moment. "Because hatred requires energy," I said, "and I don't have any left to give you." She looked away. "He's adjusting," she said. "It's been harder than he expected." I didn't respond. She waited. "You don't want to know?" she asked. "No," I said. That ended the conversation. The change in how people treated me was subtle. Some were kinder, some more distant. A few avoided me altogether. That was fine. I was not interested in managing other people's discomfort. I joined a morning walking group, nothing serious, just women my age, steady pace, quiet conversations. We talked about weather, books, knees that didn't work like they used to. No one asked me to explain my life. I appreciated that. One evening, my daughter came over. She brought soup, as if I needed feeding. We sat at the table. "You're different," she said. "In a good way," she added quickly. "I know," I said. "You're calmer," she said. "I'm not waiting anymore," I replied. "For what?" she asked. "For someone else to decide who I am," I said. She smiled. "I think I like this version of you," she said. "So do I," I replied. The truth surfaced slowly, not scandalously, not cruelly, just honestly. People began to see the timeline, the overlap. They noticed how quickly Hudson and Elaine had moved in together, how long they had known each other. Questions were asked, not loudly, but quietly. I did not answer them. I didn't need to. The truth has a way of arranging itself when left alone. Hudson called again. This time his voice sounded tired. "I made a mistake," he said. I closed my eyes, not in pain, in recognition. "I don't know who I am here," he said. "I thought leaving would make things clearer." And I asked. "It didn't," he said. I was quiet. "I'm not asking to come back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know." "I already knew," I said. "You did?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, "because you were confused before you ever left." He sighed. "She's different now," he said. "That's how certainty works," I said. "It fades once it's tested." He was silent. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "So do I," he replied. When the call ended, I sat for a long time. I realized something important. I did not feel tempted. I did not feel vindicated. I felt free. The public consequence arrived without my involvement. Elaine's reputation shifted, not dramatically, not cruelly, but people adjusted. Invitations changed. Conversations cooled. She noticed. I knew she did, because she began reaching outward, explaining herself. No one asked her to. That is how social consequence works. It is not punishment. It is distance. I focused inward. I redecorated the spare room. Turned it into a small reading space. A chair by the window, good light. I returned to books I had abandoned years ago. I cooked differently, less out of obligation, more out of interest. I slept deeply, dreamed rarely. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about Elaine or Hudson in days. That felt like success. The lesson did not come as a revelation. It arrived as understanding. Love that requires silence to survive is not love. Stability that demands erasure is not stability. And marriage at its core is not about being chosen once. It is about being chosen every day. Hudson had stopped choosing. Elaine had mistaken his absence for her arrival. Neither of those were my responsibility. I began speaking again at the library, leading a small book discussion group. I listened more than I talked. People shared stories, divorce, loss, change. I recognized myself in pieces of all of them, but I did not feel defined by any single story. I had my own, and I was still writing it. One afternoon, as I watered the plants, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was Elaine. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. I stared at the screen, then typed back. Neither did I, she replied almost immediately. I thought asking you would make it cleaner. I considered that, then wrote, some things aren't meant to be taken, they're meant to be released. She didn't respond. I put the phone down, and for the first time since that morning in the kitchen, I smiled. Not because of what I had lost, but because of what I had kept, myself. The months that followed did not rush. They unfolded the way quiet seasons do, without ceremony, without announcements. I learned the rhythm of living alone, not loneliness, aloneness. There is a difference. Loneliness asks questions. Aloneness answers them. I woke when I wanted, read in the mornings, left dishes until later if I felt like it. I noticed how much of my old life had been shaped around another person's comfort, not out of obligation, out of habit. Habits are powerful. They convince you they are necessities. Hudson faded from my days, not intentionally, just naturally. We spoke less. Then rarely, our conversations became polite updates, logistics. He sounded smaller each time. Elaine, I heard, had begun to notice. Certainty when it meets reality often grows sharp. People talk when they don't know who to talk to. I did not listen closely. I had other things to attend to. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a mirror, not studying, just looking. I noticed my posture, straighter, my face calmer. I realized I had spent years bracing myself for disappointments I could not name. Now that the disappointment had arrived and passed, there was nothing left to brace for. That felt like relief. The public story settled into something ordinary, not scandal, not gossip. Just a fact people adjusted around. Hudson and Elaine were no longer discussed with curiosity. They were discussed with restraint. People sensed the imbalance. They always do. My son visited one evening. We sat on the porch. The wind chimes moved softly. I thought you'd be angrier, he said. I was, I replied, just not loudly. He nodded. Do you miss him? He asked. I thought carefully. I miss the version of my life that felt certain, I said. I don't miss the man who made me doubt myself. He leaned back. That makes sense, he said. It did. The call came on a Tuesday, late afternoon. Hudson's number, I answered. I don't think this is working, he said. I waited. Elaine and I, he clarified. I assumed, I said. She's angry all the time, he said. She keeps asking why I'm distant. I said nothing. I thought choosing her would fix what was wrong, he continued. But I think what was wrong was me. That was closer to truth. What do you want from me? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. I think I just needed to say it out loud. You've said it, I replied. Silence. I don't expect anything, he said. That's good, I answered. He laughed quietly. You're different, he said. Yes, I replied. So are you. We ended the call without resolution. That was fine. Not every conversation needs one. Elaine appeared again in my life unexpectedly, at the library. She stood at the end of an aisle pretending to browse. She waited until I noticed her. Do you have a moment? She asked. I do, I replied. We sat at a small table. She looked tired. This isn't how I imagined it, she said. I nodded. It rarely is, I replied. I thought love would feel lighter, she said. Love that begins by displacing someone else often feels heavy, I said. She looked down. He compares us, she said, to you. I felt a flicker of something, not pride, not vindication, distance. That's not fair to either of you, I said. I know, she whispered. She hesitated. I didn't think you'd come out of this whole, she said. That was honest. I didn't know I was broken, I replied. She swallowed. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her, but apology is not restoration. I accept that you're sorry, I said. That doesn't mean I want you in my life. She nodded. I understand, she said. When she left, I felt lighter, not because she had apologized, but because I had spoken clearly. The empowerment did not come as confidence, it came as alignment. My thoughts and actions finally matched. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped justifying my peace. One evening, my daughter asked a question that stayed with me. Would you take him back if he asked? I considered it carefully. No, I said. Why? She asked. Because he would be asking from fear, I replied. Not from choice, she smiled. I like how sure you are, she said. So do I replied. I began volunteering more, helping others find books. Listening to stories. Loss is common, so is survival. People don't need advice. They need permission to feel steady again. The moment that sealed everything came quietly. I was walking home one evening when I saw Hudson and Elaine ahead of me. They were arguing, not loudly, but sharply. They didn't see me. I stopped, not to watch, but to notice. He looked small, she looked tight. They looked like two people who had mistaken escape for solution. I turned and walked another way. I didn't need to witness the ending. I had already lived through mine. That night I wrote something down, just one sentence. I was not left, I was released. I taped it inside a drawer. I didn't need to see it every day, just know it was there. The strength I found was not dramatic, it was quiet, and it stayed. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, not by erasing them. By rounding them into something you can touch without bleeding. By the time autumn arrived, my life had settled into a shape that felt intentional, not planned. Chosen. I rearranged my days without thinking of them as replacements. Morning walks became routine. The same path, the same bench halfway through. I liked watching the leaves change. It reminded me that transformation does not announce itself, it just happens. Hudson stopped calling. At first I noticed, then I didn't. The absence of something once heavy can feel like relief. I no longer checked my phone expecting explanations. I had all the ones I needed. Elaine's name came up less often. People are careful with names that carry discomfort. I did not encourage conversation about her. I did not discourage it either. Distance handled it for me. One afternoon, I found a box in the back of the closet, old photographs. I sat on the floor and went through them slowly, young faces, uncertain smiles. I did not feel sadness. I felt recognition. I had lived that life fully. That mattered. The lesson continued to clarify itself. Love that asks you to disappear is not love, it is convenience. Marriage that survives only on history is not a partnership, it is inertia. I had mistaken endurance for devotion. That is a common mistake. The community adjusted. Quietly, invitations changed. I was invited alone now. That used to sound lonely. It was, I accepted what I wanted, declined what I didn't, no explanations. That felt like freedom. One evening my son called. I ran into Dad, he said. I waited. He doesn't look well, he added. I closed my eyes, not in pain, in acceptance. I hope he finds peace, I said. He misses you, my son said. I miss who he used to be, I replied. But that person is gone. He was quiet. I understand, he said finally. I believed him. The unexpected moment came at the library. A young woman stood at the desk. She was nervous. She held a book she hadn't checked out. I don't know if I should stay married, she said suddenly. The words spilled out. I didn't ask why, she told me. People choose listeners without realizing it. I didn't give advice. I asked one question. Do you feel more like yourself with him or without him? She stared at me, then nodded slowly. She had her answer. I smiled gently. Whatever you choose, I said. Choose the version of you that can breathe. She thanked me, left. I sat there afterward thinking, sometimes the point of surviving something is to become a signpost for someone else. Elaine reached out one last time, an email, long, careful. She wrote about disappointment, confusion, regret. She wrote about how love had felt smaller than she expected. She wrote about how she now understood what she had taken for granted. I read it once, then closed it. I did not reply, not because I was unkind, but because understanding does not require engagement. The house changed with the seasons. I changed too. I stopped measuring time by before and after. I measured it by presence. Was I present in my own life? The answer was yes. One evening I cooked a meal for myself. Simple. I set one place, lit a candle. Not as a symbol, just because I liked the light. I ate slowly, listened to music. I realized something. I was not waiting anymore for apologies, for closure, for validation. I was living. The realization that stayed with me was this. Being chosen by yourself is not a consolation prize. It is the point. I had spent years trying to be chosen by someone who was quietly choosing elsewhere. I had mistaken that waiting for loyalty, It was self-erasure. I would not do that again. One night I dreamed of the kitchen, the clock on the wall, the cold counter, Elaine's voice. "Give me your husband." In the dream I answered, not with words, with silence. I woke up calm. That was how I knew I was done. I began planning something new. Not a move, not a trip, just a future that included possibility. I signed up for a class, something creative, something mine. I didn't tell anyone right away. Some beginnings don't need witnesses. The public narrative had settled, the private one had healed. I no longer felt like the woman something had been taken from. I felt like the woman who had stepped aside and found herself still standing. The class met on Wednesday evenings. A small room, neutral walls, long table, nothing remarkable that mattered. I didn't want transformation. I wanted participation. There were 8 of us, different ages, different reasons. We didn't talk much at first. We worked with our hands, focused on small details. I liked that. Creation without performance. I noticed how easily I laughed now, not loudly, just freely, laughter without checking who was listening. That was new. Hudson's name came up unexpectedly one evening. A mutual friend called. I ran into him, she said. I waited. He asked about you, she added. I hope he's well, I said. She hesitated. You don't sound curious, she said. I already know who I am, I replied. I don't need updates. She was quiet. That sounds healthy, she said. It was. Elaine faded further, not dramatically, just less present in shared spaces. People choose sides without declaring them. They choose ease. I had become easy to be around again. That mattered more than loyalty. The creative work began to reveal things, not memories, patterns. I noticed how often I chose balance. Symmetry. I noticed how little chaos I allowed. I wasn't judging it, just observing. Sometimes understanding yourself is enough. One afternoon, my daughter asked to come with me on a walk. We moved slowly. She matched my pace. I think I understand what happened now, she said. I waited. He didn't leave you, she said. He left himself. I smiled. That's very perceptive, I said. She laughed. I get that from you, she replied. That felt like a circle closing. The question I had avoided finally came from a friend. Would you ever marry again? She asked. I considered it carefully. I don't think in terms of again, I said. I think in terms of alignment. She nodded. That sounds wise, she said. It's just honest, I replied. Hudson called one last time. His voice sounded steadier. I'm moving, he said. Where? I asked. Closer to work, he replied. I understood. You sound better, he said. I am, I replied. I'm glad, he said. I believed him. I wanted to apologize, he added, for the way I handled everything. I let the words sit. Thank you, I said. I accept that. He exhaled. That means more than you know, he said. It's not for you, I replied. It's for me. He was quiet. I wish you well, he said. I wish you clarity, I replied. We hung up. That was the last time. The moment that confirmed everything arrived quietly. I was back in the kitchen, the same counter. The same clock, morning light. I placed my hand on the counter. It wasn't cold this time, just solid. I thought about that day, Elaine's voice, the request. I realized something. She had asked for my husband, but what she had actually done was give me a question. Who am I without what I thought defined me? I had answered it slowly, but completely. I wrote again, not journaling, just notes, sentences that felt true. I am not replaced. I am not left over. I am not diminished. I didn't keep them. I threw them away after writing them. Truth doesn't need storage. The public perception had shifted fully. I was no longer the woman who had been left. I was the woman who had continued. That difference mattered. I received an invitation, a small gathering. Someone asked if I would bring a guest. I declined, not because I was alone, but because I went by myself, stayed as long as I wanted, left when I was ready. That felt like ownership. The question that remained was not about the past. It was about the lesson. What had this required of me? It had required stillness, not reaction. It had required restraint, not revenge. It had required trust in my own timing. That was the hardest part. The night before my birthday, I sat by the window. The house was quiet. I thought about the woman I had been that morning in the kitchen, the one who hadn't answered yet. I wished I could tell her something, not reassurance, not advice, just this: you will not lose yourself, you will find her. I slept deeply that night, no dreams. That felt like completion.